the things maybe that attracted you to somebody that you thought was so fun, maybe become really annoying after a while.
Someone should tell everyone, eventually the dating adrenaline dies and love becomes work.
So you have to learn, okay, well, it's not about who's going to win, the right way to parent. It's like we've got to do this together.
Today's episode is a really special one. I'm sitting down with Ash and Sibs Meaney. They're dear friends of mine, and they've also been married for nearly 30 years. Their story is rich. It's full of growth, commitment, and a beautiful journey of coming to faith together after they started building a relationship. Today, we talk about how they met, the early days of their relationship, the surprises and challenges that came along, and how their faith really became super central to their story. They share what they've learned through this journey of almost 3 decades, actually over 3 decades, and how they've stayed connected and what advice they'd give to anyone dating in today's world. I'm so excited to share this episode with you guys. So whether you're single, you're dating, or you're deep into a long-term relationship, this conversation is full of wisdom, honesty, and so much heart. So let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Relationships. Hey, guys.
Hello.
So glad to have you guys here.
Thank you.
So good to be here.
I know. Look, we're in a studio.
I know.
Growing up.
It's amazing.
We're actually in person. This is
It's
so nice.
so lovely to be in person.
Compared to our last episode
Yes.
where we were on but it's okay.
Yes.
Brian, we're baby steps there.
Yeah.
And Sibs, thank you so much for coming on. I know this is not normal for you. And
Not at all, no.
but you did say it was a big thing that she said yes.
Oh,
So
yes.
I am eternally
yes.
grateful.
You're welcome. I'm sure I'll get through this. I'll be fine.
You will be totally fine. You'll be totally fine. Just pictures of my living room. We're just hanging out. There's just some mics here,
Yeah,
some cameras.
It's a nice setting.
It's a nice room.
It is,
actually.
right? It's
Yeah, yeah.
easy. I love it. Well, I want to start off by asking you how long you guys have been married.
We have been married for 32 years.
Wow. And how long have you been together?
So, 35, because we were together for 3 and a bit years before we got married.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Quite the journey.
Quite the journey.
I mean, yeah.
I'm so excited to kind of dig into your guys' how you met and everything. This is part of my marriage series where I'm highlighting
Yep.
couples. I think we can learn so much from each other. And so, Ash, you and I think in our last episode, we have to get Sibs on. And I was like, this is the perfect opportunity to
Yes.
do that.
Yes.
We can kind of get, pick both your brains. But I want to start off with, how did you guys meet? What was the story behind how you guys met?
Wow. Well, we were young. I was 18. Ash was
Okay.
22. And we were both living in London. And we just met through friends, just through our
Okay.
social circle.
Yeah, the same social scene, hanging out in the same sort of bars and clubs and areas. And that's kind of where we were all
Yeah.
kind of circling. And that's where we met, through the same group of friends.
Yeah.
Aw,
I'd heard of Sibs, actually. I'd heard of you before I met you.
really?
Had you heard of me?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So what was it that kind of, attracted you to each other? What were those first?
Well,
You did you not like each other? Well, I didn't like him, and then
So-
he grew on me.
Yes, that's true.
no, not quite. So the first few times we met, it was just in social settings, and I was really shy, and Ash was really loud and very extroverted. So I was a little bit nervous of who he was, and never in a million years thought that he would be interested in me. It just didn't even cross my mind.
And I had seen Sibs in a group of girls,
Mm-hmm.
sort of, and these girls were like models and socialites and
Mm-hmm.
all done up. And
Mhm.
Sibs was this gorgeous girl who wasn't done up in the same way, but had femininity
Mm-hmm.
and beauty and this peace about her. And then when she smiled, that's what caught my attention, funnily enough. In the midst of all this glitz and glamour was this very quiet, beautiful, feminine lady. And I thought, wow, it got my intrigue.
I love that. So how'd you ask her out?
Yes, well, not then. She
So that was-
rang.
yeah.
She rang to speak to a friend that was living at the house I was in.
Okay.
And this is pre-cell phone days, right? So you just had to make a phone call to the home wherever that person lived, right? So
Yeah, so those of you that don't understand what we're talking about, we're talking about a phone that's connected to the wall.
There's a plug in the wall.
There was a plug in the wall.
You'd dial, or you had to
dial one of those ones. And I answered the phone, and she was
and my
calling.
friend wasn't there, so
And we chatted, and little window of opportunity, I said, how about lunch?
Okay, so you kept it casual.
Yep.
Didn't okay.
Yep.
And were you interested in him at that point?
not really, but I thought, well, no one else is asking me for lunch, so I better say yes. But
was it a yes?
No, it wasn't a pity yes, but we'd had a great conversation on the phone, and so
Yeah, that's true.
I thought, oh yeah, let's see how this goes. Let's see, what happens.
So what were the early days dating? What was that like for you guys? Like, let's reel it back.
I think it was, I think it was a bit different for me because I think we started a kind of relationship without really meaning to.
Yes, I think so. I mean, we just really got on. And, I guess the phone conversation was like, kind of intro into how our relationship went. We just really enjoyed talking to each other, being together. Ash just really made me laugh. And for me, that's super attractive. I really humor.
After it was often laughing at me.
Yeah.
And
Not
still
with
is.
me.
It's still, I was going to say probably still.
Yeah, still is. And we just hit it off and just love spending time together. So, but obviously, at 18 and Ash 22, you're not really thinking about the future very much. You're just kind of just getting to know each other. Yeah. And so for the first few months, it really was just about spending time together.
Well, I think I kept sort of pursuing you in a sense, I think, because you were quieter. I don't think I'd ever dated someone who was so quiet. So we got on, yes, but there was also a quietness about you that I was kind of like, I was keen to explore. What's going on?
There's like a little mystery there,
mystery.
right?
That's what it was.
Something you wanted to like
There's
unpack.
a little bit of mystery. I wasn't used to mystery. I was kind of used to and so I think that's what kind of attracted me. And then we went to your home for Christmas, and I think that was a real big step, introducing to the parents.
That's big. So at that point, how many months had you guys been together?
3 or 4 months.
Yes, not that long.
Okay.
And
Her parents are in France.
so my parents live in. I'm French.
Okay.
So and my parents and my whole family were in France. So I think we'd been together maybe 4 months. And so he did come for Christmas. Which, looking back, I don't know what I was thinking.
I was going to say that's like really
I know.
sin. Like,
But
wow.
I guess anyway. So and so we went, and he introduced. He was introduced to my family, and they loved him, of course. And so, yeah.
That charming self of yours, Ash, I'm sure was on full display.
Oh, it was. I was like, I have to woo the folk.
You have to woo the folk.
And my French was terrible. So
It's just so hard.
It's a hard language.
It is hard.
It is a very
It's a hard language. It's still a hard language.
Do you speak it? Like,
No.
not even, he's like, I'm not even going to try.
No, I won't speak it right now because
He can get away with food words. That's kind of
If
his
you-
main.
yeah.
He can
Food.
order lunch.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, at least if you
food, drinks, the basics, at the very basics.
hello, goodbye.
Hello,
Yeah.
goodbye.
I love that. What I find interesting about your guys' story is that you both were not Christian or of faith before you guys met.
Not
And so
at all.
that's something that came into your relationship later.
Yes.
Walk me through that. Like, was it one was Christian before the other, or was it something you both kind of explored? Or because that's kind of a tough hurdle to get over, I think, in a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah. So we were together for a good year and a bit. We had moved to Paris for work, and that's where Ash had, I guess, a God encounter and began to pursue the Christian faith. And so that was very new for both of us. And I remember watching really from the side and kind of just seeing, oh, well, how's this going to turn out, And then soon after spending a year in Paris, we moved back to England. And that's when he really began to sort of dive into a church community and doing Alpha. And that did bring a little bit of tension between us, because suddenly he has this whole new social life. You know, he's met this group of young people at Alpha. He's going to church on Sundays, and there's a whole side to him that I'm not a part of. And so that was kind of difficult for a few months. And it did definitely bring some tension and a few arguments. Until one day I was like, oh, okay, I'll come with you to church. and then through that, I then had my own faith journey, and then that really became something that we, kind of both had together.
I mean, it was a difficult transition because we were both in the fashion business. So
I was going to say, what were you guys doing in
we're
Paris?
both models in Paris, living a very different lifestyle. I hated Christianity and religion, and Sibs, you didn't grow up in the faith either, did you? So neither of us had a faith.
Yeah, I didn't, but I went to a Catholic convent in England for several years, so I did have some background as to what that looked like.
So we had no intention on living the Christian life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so my experience started to change my values and my worldview and my behaviors, and over time.
Yeah.
Sibs might say a little slower than perhaps it should have. But so I started to change. My worldview was changing.
Yeah.
And so when we went back to London, diving into a church community, I kind of figured out what Christianity was, because I didn't know what it was. I didn't grow up in the church.
Yeah.
And didn't know what Christianity really was. So as I began to understand how to live the Christian life, we'd already lived a life together.
Yeah.
But I was then sort of working out, well, hang on, I'm not sure I want to live the same way.
Yeah.
Certainly in regard to the sex, drug and rock and roll of the fashion industry that I'd particularly been quite a part of. And so that then created a bit of a chasm, I'd say. And so there was this space we had to negotiate. And for me, it was becoming more and more important in my life. And if Sibs was going to be important in my life, I wanted her to know it and experience it herself.
Absolutely.
And so that's where the tension grew. So, but then of course the beauty was that she eventually decided to come to the church. And I think she saw, other people other than just her crazy boyfriend.
Yeah. Yeah. What was that experience like for you when you started to go to church?
Well, it was very different because, as I said, I went to a boarding school in England, which was with the nuns as in a convent.
Oh, wow.
So, very solemn and quiet experience when you went into church. And we went into this really lively church where people were talking really loudly, and worship was loud, and they had a band, which was, in 1991 was pretty radical.
I was going to say, that sounds like it would be back then.
Yeah.
So it was a whole new experience. And then I met other young people my age who had their own experience, and then really began to learn and understand about the Christian faith. And it was so attractive to me. And so I had my own sort of journey, and but it certainly I was going in one direction, and it just I did a 360 or 180, whichever one it is, just a complete change and turnaround.
That's amazing. And I feel like God brought you guys kind of together in that sense, on the same page in your own way, though, which is beautiful. It wasn't like a forced or an ultimatum on your end.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was just an unfolding naturally, beautifully, kind of letting you get to where you wanted to be.
Yeah, definitely.
And then lots of course relational negotiations. We'd been living together in Paris and all of that sort of stuff. And I think there was sort of a lifestyle that we'd lived that I was keen on just kind of having a break from, to just kind of sort out what was going on in me. So we had to work through all of that.
Did you guys stop living together at that point, or were there big transitions like that?
Well, I think, it was more circumstantial. So we moved back to London. Ash had a family home, so he moved back in with his parents. I moved in, I rented a room, in an apartment. So it was, it was a choice, but it was also just a reality that we couldn't really afford to just be together. But we did make that choice.
Yeah. And then from that point, how did you guys recognize that this was like, okay, this is someone serious? Like, describe that moment. Was it a moment, or was it kind of a slow progress of like, this is someone I really, like, I want to be my life partner? Because you guys were still fairly young. Because
totally.
at that point, you're together 3 years, right? Like, you're getting to the
3 years by the time we got married.
By the time you got married, you're like in the 2-ish, I'm assuming, and a half years, 2-ish years.
Yeah, it was, I think, been 2 years, because I think we had a year's engagement, which is way too long. But I think it was, I mean, I feel like once we sort of both, had a faith, both really engaged in that, and also in the church, we just kind of knew, well, I certainly felt that, this is a person I want to spend the rest of my life with. So we knew it was heading that way. But I don't know, I feel like, again, because I was so young, I don't feel, and things felt different to how it is now. There was less. Now, you have to have like the big engagement party. It's like this huge sort of build up, and everything's like Pinterest central. And it didn't feel like that in those days. It felt more organic, more authentic. And so there wasn't real pressure. I don't feel.
I just want to say, for the record, that I fell in love in Paris.
Did you? Okay. I was like, I want to know the moment.
I definitely fell in love in Paris. There's something happened in Paris.
Yeah,
fell in love with Sibs, met Jesus, and I thought, life is changing.
Wow.
And I can't say I thought marriage, but I certainly thought this is going to be a deep and long relationship.
Was it a moment that you had, or was it just like...
No, I think it was a gradual understanding that we had outlasted. This relationship had outlasted all others.
Mm-hmm.
It had gone deeper than all others.
Mm-hmm.
So all the signs were there of commitment and depth and love for each other that just made me think, this is taking on a quality that previous relationships hadn't.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Yeah.
And what about her? So now I'm tracking through your relationship because I want to get the full span. So
sure.
Now you're married. What do your early years look like? Did you have challenges that surprised you? Because I want to contrast to where you are today to where you were then. Like, what is that early? Because you guys were still, again, relatively young.
Yeah.
Living in London at that time. Like, what were those early years like?
Well, I was really easy and perfect to live with, and Sibs had major issues.
Oh, she was the problem.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
The quiet one, huh?
Yes.
Blaming her.
And so it was really hard. And there's French and English together.
Yeah.
Which is never good.
Yeah.
Particularly during rugby and football.
I'm curious how that goes. Yeah.
Well, the French always win. It's simple. That's how it goes.
Shots fired already.
Well, I think, you're right. We were really young. Well, I was 22 when we got married, which, our youngest daughter is older than that now. And if she was to get married now, I'd be like, whoa.
You're like, whoa.
So
live your life.
Yes,
all the things,
So, but, of course, I thought I was mature. I thought I kind of knew it all, as you do at that age. But it was definitely challenging because, even though we had lived together for a year in Paris, we'd had a good year and a bit not living together, and now we're also, we're moving in and we're making a home, and this is like for life. So that brings a sort of not pressure, but just brings a different dynamic, and we had to learn to navigate social life together. So, he can't just say yes to an event without asking me, and vice versa. We have sort of a check-in. That
was a bit difficult.
That was a little bit challenging. Sure. We have to manage finances together, and, we function very differently with that, still do. But
I don't know what you mean.
But, so suddenly you have to like play grown up, right? And it's not, it's just different. It's not as exciting.
It's overrated. Like, don't grow up.
Yeah. So it's certainly, and then of course, I mean, even though Ash was perfect and still is, you get into sort of you get into arguments and patterns of arguments that, we had to learn to navigate. And
yeah, I mean, proximity for the long haul, like coming together and being inside each other's worlds. When you're dating, you're not so much. And even living in Paris, we weren't so much. Sibs had her own world of friends. I had my world, my friends. And occasionally they collide together, but also we would go out separately.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we're in it now. And that proximity changed the dynamic a little bit, I think. And in the proximity of intimacy like that, you also see even more deeply what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And what baggage you brought with you from the past.
Yeah.
And I think I bought a semi-trailer load of baggage. Sibs bought probably just a little U-Haul.
A little carry-on.
She had a little carry-on. A little French carry-on.
Little French, I could see it. Like,
and I bought
blue.
I bought a removals team.
Yeah.
But also, some of the things, I mean, I think it's anyone who's living, in close proximity with somebody, the things maybe that attracted you to somebody that you thought was so fun, maybe become really annoying after a while,
And what were some? Tell me examples. I mean,
I can't think of anything that we work through them, but, just some of these things. So you have to work through that dynamic of, okay, so, now I have to negotiate, this little habit that maybe he's doing, or maybe I'm doing, that is not as cute anymore, to the other. And
that adrenaline of the early years, that's key. Someone should tell everyone, eventually the dating adrenaline dies.
Yeah.
And love becomes work. There's a transition point. Everyone should know this, that happens. And when that happens, that's when what Sib said happens. All of a sudden, what was attractional might become annoying as opposed to attractional, because the enamored sort of giddy, heady days of dating and relationing, exploring is kind of dying away. The adrenaline and the infatuation, all those energies die away, and every day starts to creep in.
Yeah.
Domestic life, everyday life happens. And that's when it shifts.
Yeah. I think that's usually when people think, oh my God, do I not love them anymore? Are they not my person? Like, I don't even recognize this person anymore. I fell out of love with them. We kind of get into this notion that it's going to be like that forever.
Yes. It's the Hollywoodization.
Yeah. And it's
of relation dating, and that it should stay at a certain level.
At that level.
And it can't.
It can't, because it has to go deeper, but it also has to become normal in a sense, right? Like your everyday lives have to start happening at that point. Yeah. Because you're combining lives, right?
Yep.
And I think that's a big misconception. I think that's where a lot of people get trapped, is in that. And then their first couple of years of marriage, they're like, this is horrible. Like,
what have I done?
Have I done? This is not the right person for me. And then you hear that happen a lot.
I thought we were soulmates.
I thought we were,
All of that sort of stuff creeps in. The doubt creeps in. And that's when you've got key choices. We dig deeper, we do the work, or not.
Yeah.
And I think it's all too easy not to. And I think the other thing, Sibs, would be fair to say for us, we didn't have, it wasn't perfectly set up. I wasn't the breadwinner. So neither of us had steady jobs, necessarily big bank. Like, I think there's this sort of romanticized view that everything needs to be in place. The job, the money, the house, and we didn't have that, did we?
No.
I mean, I think in our marriage ceremony, I think there's a part in the English ceremony where you say, with all,
know what he's going to say.
with all my worldly goods, with thee I share. And for me, it was a skateboard.
Yeah. One of those truckload of baggage.
And so again, I'd want to stress at this point, I always say to folk, there's no perfect, you can't have all the T's and I's done before you step in.
Yeah.
I know there's the pressure to, but you don't need to. And, you can work it out together. Get on the adventure together.
Yeah.
And work it out together. That's part of the deepening relationship, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because I think that's the gift of getting married young. I like to think of it as when you get married young, it's a startup, right? Nobody has anything figured out. Every day you're trying to like, I don't know, finances. What do we do? Should we hire someone? You know, you're figuring all that out. And I think the challenge of getting married older, you know, maybe you're in your mid 30s, is you've now created a life entirely for yourself.
Yes.
Everything revolves around you.
Yep.
You've built a great life and now you have to merge. So that's like, it's a merger at that point, you know?
Yep.
So I think there's beauty in getting married young, right? You know, it's not right for everybody. Maybe people don't find someone at that age, but I think you're a good testament of like the beauty of getting married young, because then you're building from scratch together.
Yeah.
You don't really fully have your career set, your finances, all that. I think that's what I'm finding is really challenging as we get older, and seeing friends of mine and myself. I'm like, wow, there's so many more reasons not to be with somebody.
Yes.
You know, when you're older and you're set in kind of your ways versus when you're younger and you're exploring and building together. I think there's a beauty in that, you know, getting to do that.
Definitely. Yeah, no, very good. Yeah.
So I'm curious too. I know you got into ministry. Well, when was that? What timeline wise, like you getting into more full time?
Well, pretty early on.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
well,
I worked in a non-profit for many years, a children's HIV non-profit.
Okay.
For a good chunk of time.
yeah, for 7
That was
years.
ministry.
Yeah.
And that was for 7 years. So we exited the fashion business.
Okay.
And there was an interim phase of doing a couple of different jobs. Sibs worked, you worked too, didn't you? And then I started getting into ministry.
But we had been married 13 years when he was ordained and became a pastor. So we had our 3 kids by then.
Okay.
So we were very well established within our marriage by then. So it wasn't like, you know, we married and he became a pastor straight away. So it felt.
Although we were used to, I mean, in the non-profit, we were used to not living on much money, which comes with
which
the
is
territory.
easier to make that step to become a pastor, right? Versus having the big bank account and suddenly
Yes.
Being
to a pastor's salary.
Like zeros
Yeah.
there? Is that a mistake?
We had some friends in seminary who'd left, you know, sizable incomes to do ministry,
To do
whereas we were upgrading for us.
Yeah, you're like, well, this is great. It's steady.
Steady, you know, but yeah.
Well, before we get into that, I'm actually curious too, how did your marriage shift when you had kids? Bringing that into
Great
the
question. Yeah.
picture.
Well, luckily, you know, you have 9 months to prepare for the baby.
Yeah, that didn't
which
do it.
definitely helps. There is definitely a moment of like, oh my gosh, what have we done? When you bring the baby home and you're like, oh, we have to be responsible for this little life.
Isn't that wild? That
It's
always
so crazy.
trips me out. Like you're carrying this baby and then you have it and then they're like, bye.
I know, right?
Go. And you're like, I'm supposed to know what to do with this. Like there's no manual. It's just like, take it home and keep it alive. You're like,
B, everybody said to me, you'll have this amazing moment. You'll look at your first baby and you will get this sense of this is how God sees me. And you'll have this epiphany. And when Sam, our firstborn, got put in my arms, I thought, oh no. Oh no. What am I going to do? Like grow up time.
yeah.
Like grow up time.
Yeah. Like it was like kind of like that reality check.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a reality check. Didn't have the epiphany at all.
Yeah.
It was more
We
like
did have the epiphany, but later on. But there is that fear moment, definitely. But I think the dynamic, obviously, it completely changes because, you know, especially in the sort of bottleneck of the really young years of having young kids, you know, your time is stretched, you're tired, you get very little time to yourself. So it is definitely a new season. But I think for us, and I mean, maybe I'll just speak for myself, but I think both of us really enjoyed being parents. So I think that helped. Like, and we were lucky. We have amazing kids and they were great babies. Like, we didn't have the nightmare child that never sleeps and, you know, that cries all night, all the time. So, you know,
you can't say that on the microphone.
well, I'm just saying, like, we were fortunate. Our kids, you know, we really enjoyed being parents. But it's definitely challenging because all of a sudden you have to make decisions, you know, for these lives that, you know, we also bring in how you were brought up, like your family
those differences
of origin, right? And how, you know, what you think is right to do, you know, Ash may think differently. And so you have to navigate that and, you know, and then, that can bring some tension and arguments. And so you have to learn, okay, well, it's not about who's going to win, the right way to parent. It's like, we've got to do this together. And sometimes we had to learn to, okay, well, even though I think I'm right, and Ash has a different idea, but, really what is best, for us, for the child, and go, try and be as unified as possible. Also for the sake of your children, because they can see they are very good at conquering and dividing.
Oh, I'm sure.
I think just before we go there, can I just add, I do think there's a challenge for the first baby in the sense that it's no longer about you two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what's that shift? What
So
happens
there's
there?
a real shift that happens. And I think they're very different worlds, the shifts. Because for us guys, we don't have the hormonal, the physical, the biological, the spiritual, the emotional impact of what happens to our bodies. And so I had to watch Sibs go through this radical change in all these different ways. But I'm outside it. I just have to try and work out how to help and how to care and how to relate to that, including getting whatever she asked for, the exact moment she asked for it.
I was not that bad.
I don't doubt it. I feel like you're probably an angel.
But there is a dynamic, like all of a sudden unmet needs, like all of a sudden my needs are secondary.
Yeah.
Actually.
Third probably at that point.
Yes,
Okay.
third.
I know, sorry.
But yes.
Baby Sibs.
And that's real.
Yeah.
That is real. So there's the challenge of growing up and responsibility. We've got another life coming. And then there's the challenge of there's someone that's going to demand nearly all of Sibs. And I'm out of the picture. And I've got choices to make then to lean in, and I have to learn to give of myself. That's where, I know you've heard me say this, love costs. It has to cost or it's not love. I would say that.
Yeah.
And that's yet another stage of where all of a sudden the dynamic of relationship between husband and wife changes because there's another human entering the picture.
Yeah.
So,
and I think in our episode, we talked a lot about that in our solo episode together, where marriage becomes more about the other versus self. And I think that's a hard shift for a lot of people.
Yes.
Because we're in such a society where everything is about you, what you want, your needs being met. And it's a delicate dance also, It's like taking care of yourself, but then at some point you have to recognize that it's really about service to the other.
Yep.
And I think that's really hard for a lot of people when they get in a relationship. And I think that's where a lot of problems end up coming.
Yeah. The mystery of love. I'm beginning to realize the mystery of love is that it's in learning to mature and become other-centered, that it reaches a depth that is even more fulfilling than you could have imagined. But you have to go through that sort of, it's not about me cost, because it feels like that initially, but it's not how it ends up. It ends up you are more deeply connected and in love than you can imagine. But you have to do that. That it's the mystery that is love. It gets deeper and more beautiful and more connected. But it costs to get there. And I just don't think we hear that much.
No, we don't talk a lot about the cost of love and the cost of long-term commitment and marriage.
No.
We've become such a consumeristic society that it's always about what is it going to give me? What is it going to reflect on me, right? Everything becomes so self-centered that we lose that. Like we don't get told that enough.
No.
And I think we don't have it's like almost like we need a reality check to what marriage really is.
Yes.
In order to sustain it long term.
Yes. In the same way, a picture of what it can look like if you go through that. Because then it gives us the hope that, oh no, this is really worthwhile fighting for. This is really worthwhile putting myself second.
Yeah. I'm curious in that topic too. What do you feel like is holding men back from from becoming that version of themselves? Because I often, we hear this a lot with women feeling like they take on the majority of the load of everything, the household, the kids, and we talk about it being so sacrificial for the other. I'm just curious, in your mind, because it happens for women too, but I'm curious from your perspective, what you feel like is a big roadblock for men in that.
I think this could be its whole an episode.
It could be. I was just curious because
we could talk about. Topic. I do think there's our own history with our own fathers. That plays a massive role. Fears of, am I going to end up? That sort of echo and fear that's in us. I think there's a fear of growing up. I think we can get stuck in adolescence.
Absolutely.
And I think men in particular can do that. The notion of men gaming in their late 20s, early 30s, like that, we can get stuck and we don't want to grow up and we don't want to take responsibility. So I think there's a lot of that in there. And then there's just I do think we have a particular bent towards not looking at our inner worlds, not looking at our emotional well-being and are we healthy or where we're not healthy and doing that work. I feel men, we tend to be less interested in that. And it's harder sometimes. Again, depending on the family of origin stuff that we've carried in.
Yeah.
But it's harder to do that work for men. And a lot of the men I meet with are struggling to emotionally connect with their wives. And their wives feel that. And that's often where there's a lot of tension. And so I often talk about over-emotionality and under-emotionality and how those two worlds feel like you're in a very distant land from each other. And then communication is from those two places.
Yeah.
And that's a hard place to get stuck in.
I think it affects the dynamic, especially again, as you bring kids in and all of that. It almost like it pushes you further and further apart. You bring kids in, you bring financial issues in, you bring job changes, job losses, all these big, family member passes away or whatnot. And I feel like all those can kind of erode a marriage over long term, right?
Yep.
When you haven't gotten to that point.
Totally. And so being diligent on recognizing the need to deeply connect and to stay deeply connected, because life's stuff, for want of a better expression, kids, jobs, careers, houses, moving house, changing careers, and all the challenges of life that take place, slowly but surely have a way of pulling you away from each other. There's a gravitational pull. And in a culture that also promotes that, I would suggest there's a gravitational pull that pulls us apart. And we have to fight for that deeper connection.
Yeah. Sibs, I'm curious, how do you maintain that from your perspective, that deep connection in a partnership in long term?
Well, so we have a few things that we enjoy doing that help us talk and communicate. So we like walking our neighborhood. And now these are the things that we're doing now.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was different when we had, young kids. But right now, in the season that we're in, we like walking our neighborhood or going for long walks on the beach. And that's often a time, it could be at the end of the day before dinner. And that's a time where we'll connect. And obviously we can talk about, the mundane things of the day, but it's often when, the deeper, if you have that connection time, even if it's just like half an hour, then it sort of opens up the door to then, go into that deeper connection. So that's something that we do a lot of these days. And when the kids were younger and, our time was, sort of shorter and, we had date nights. And I think, again, it's something that we've learned. I was as I mentioned, I was super shy when we first met, and Ash was very loud, and Ash was way more in touch with his emotions. And that's something that he's always worked on throughout our whole marriage. It took a lot more time for me and a lot more work for me to become self-aware and really begin to explore my feelings and then not only just explore that, but then learn to communicate them. And so I have to say that's not something that was instant for me. And I would really say in 32 years of marriage, I'd say the last 15 years is when I really kind of been able to do that much better. And so, but it just takes work. I mean, like, as I say, just date nights, communicating, even, when it was, we were very good at putting the kids down to bed at 7:30, and we had our evenings. Ash did work quite a lot when he became a pastor in the evenings, but obviously we still have a few evenings at home during the week. And so we were really intentional on like, this is our time together, and the kids are got to go to bed because we need to be able to relate and look at each other and have that space. So we've always been, I think, pretty good at doing that. But it takes the work. Like, you have to do it because it's easy to switch on the TV, which I love. But you've also got to make the space.
Like, it takes intentionality to create that space and to create the connection. It doesn't just happen.
No, it doesn't just happen.
I think a couple of things that we learned. Well, let me just say, I think I learned. Let me say that. Let me own that. You can't force the other person to change. You can't change the other person.
Which is really annoying, by the way.
So annoying. You're like, if only you had this, you could just be.
And that's really important to accept. At some point, you have to accept that the bits that you want to change, that you think they should change, you can't force. It has to be in their time and in their walk and in their journey. You can encourage it, you can love it, you can speak to it, but you can't force it to change. And I think we learned that. I learned that the hard way. I think early on, Sibs very graciously acknowledged that I was more connected emotionally, but I was also messier emotionally. And I tried to force Sibs to see herself emotionally. And actually, I was probably more misogynistic than I was healthy in doing that. And I had to realize I can't force her or bully her to change. I have to give the space and create the safe environment for that change to happen. And so being safe for each other is a real challenge. And we had to create that safety, didn't we?
I think that is really key in a relationship, is being that safe person, creating that safe environment, so that whatever comes your way, whatever challenges that come, which they absolutely will, there's deep trust, there's deep sense of connection and safety, so that, because it takes a lot, when you're going through an emotional upheaval, you're trying to sort of dig into, your feelings, maybe for the first time, really understanding yourself. And that can be a really painful process. And if you don't feel safe with somebody, you're not going to reveal those deeper emotions. You're not going to really bare your soul. And I think that, because of our deep love for each other, our journey together, again, I think creating that safety, creating that trust, that just takes time. And there's it just takes years of being together and trusting each other and walking alongside each other and just getting to know each other really deeply and well. And so when the time is right, you feel that you are able to take the mask off or reveal a little bit more of the baby's childhood pain or whatever it is. And so I think, yes, Ash was definitely, wilder, messier, and did trying to change me, but I was strong.
You're like, no.
I'm going to do
the French resistance movement.
Say she's French. She's like, no,
I'll do it in my own way. But when the time came, and he was patient, and because he had gone through his own journey of healing, he was able to just kind of be there for me. And he had more understanding and knowledge, which for me was really helpful at the time. Did
that make it hard for you to connect with her. I think in those.
Yes. I mean, I think that's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
We marriage is for life.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lifespan, you change.
Yeah.
Spiritually, emotionally, physically, unfortunately. We change. And we change at different times.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard enough when you're going through changes, let alone when you've got someone who's with you.
Yeah.
And so you have to learn to be patient. You have to learn to give each other that safety and that connectivity, and that unconditional, at times, unconditional love is only shown when you want it to be conditional, and you have to let it be unconditional.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. It's sacrificial. And I think at times, and that's what creates safety,
Mm-hmm.
is when I'm challenged to want to I wish Sibs would just, I have to
Tell me how she really feels. Or, open up or.
Yeah, open up, or I wish I could share this because I feel like that's the challenge, is to let it go, is to surrender to the journey, and to trust that, we will meet each other in these phases of change, in the love that we have for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think safety over time is what did it for us, is we became the person I wanted to feel most safe with was Sibs, and vice versa. And I think that takes time to build, particularly if you've come from an absence of safety, which I certainly had.
Yeah.
My childhood was not safe. So I had distrust that I had to work on, of intimate relationship, of it not being safe.
Yeah.
And I had to work on that.
How did you know that she was worth waiting for that? Because I asked that because I feel like in today's society, maybe in my age group, I think we're wanting the person to already be there, right? So we're expecting them to already be emotionally mature, already be able to process their feelings, to have gone to therapy, have done all that work prior to being in the relationship. And I think it's risky to choose someone who's maybe still figuring that out, And so I think that's just the reality of today. I think we're all trying to be so much more advanced and to grow, and the society really pushes that. So it's like, and I don't know if there's an answer to this, but it's like, how do you know that this is someone worth waiting for developing, maybe in those areas that you want to see developed?
I think commitment demands a level. It's got to. If commitment's worth anything, it's got to demand a level of sacrificial waiting. Some of the best things in life that we love, we've waited for. It is somewhat how life works in reality. In our, fast food, consumer-driven, microwaved life, the best things actually take work and time and are worth waiting for. And I think that's where marital relationship, that's where commitment, that's where deep love is formed, in the waiting.
Yeah.
And so I do think the pressure is, I'm not making light of how hard it is. We've been through some dark seasons of wrestling with dysfunctional patterns and getting stuck. So I think there's a waiting, and in the waiting, there's that muscle of commitment that actually, I have to recommit my love to Sibs, and vice versa. And then I think community is really important. Having voices around you that have done the work, have walked it out ahead of you, to be able to say, hang on in there, guys. You guys will get through this. This is not, you're not alone. You're not isolated. People have walked this journey before you. It's okay. There is a map. You may not see it, but you can get through this. And I think that's really been helpful for us, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Communities, I think, for us, I mean, we had a huge community in London when we were newlyweds, and even just with having our young kids, lots of friends around us, a big church community. And I think that was key to, us feeling sort of being part of something bigger than us, our family feeling surrounded, our kids feeling surrounded. So you're not alone by yourself, like trying to work it out. You have, like Ash said, you have models of older families, older married, couples, and younger dating. Like you're surrounded by all different age groups, and there's just a sense of we're all in this together, and we're all just trying to work it out. And yes, you can reach out to somebody if you need help, and you can also have a really good laugh, and and that I think was really key to, just part of our growth, even as humans, right? It was, I think.
Don't go it alone.
So yeah, because
don't go it alone.
Normalize the struggles, right? When you're in a community, it's like, you struggle with that too. We do too. Or how did you get through it? Where I think when you're alone, you think, oh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. I don't think anyone else is, because we're also fed on Instagram the perfect relationships, right? Yes. With the perfect photo and the on vacation and the perfect 4 kids, and we're fed that. We see that a lot, and we assume that nobody else has problems.
Yep.
It's like subconscious thought that we have. We just assume. And so I think that's a great point. That community is so vital.
Isolation. It's a killer. And so often, as men, particularly, I would say. Maybe you can speak on.
Yeah, women are definitely a lot better.
But as men,
we're much better at that.
Whatever.
We are.
But our tendency as men is to isolate.
Yes.
And to mask it up, and we do that at our peril, because then we think this struggle is all I see. There's no way out. And actually, the realization that you're not alone, the realization that other people have their struggles. Relationships are hard work. Love costs. There's lots of mess, but there's lots of glory in the midst of the mess.
Yeah.
And the glory begins to outweigh the mess. And that's what kind of does it. That's what carries you through it.
Yeah.
And you need community to do that work.
Yeah.
You need people inside it with you.
Yeah.
Not on the outside. Not the people that we just go, how are you? Oh, great. How are you? It's not that world.
No,
It's the people that say, how are you? And they want to know, like, really, how are you? You need those people on the inside circle to be able to say, hey, I can see you're not well. What's going on?
Yeah.
Are you guys all right? Can we come and see you and check out how things are going? And I think at times we've had those friends.
Yeah, we definitely.
Who have called it out and seen it.
It's really
and
key.
Phoned up. I've managed to get myself some accountability mates who have phoned up and said, is Sibs in the room? Like, this is where it's gone. No. Good. I'm going to bang some questions at you.
Yeah.
How are you? What are you doing? Have you done this? Are you doing this? Are you? And a proper accountability to make sure I'm not going sideways. And you need those relationships to carry you through the seasons.
Yeah, because you get hit by so much.
Yeah.
And and maybe it's just LA and the area that we live, but I feel like that's actually rare. Like, it's hard. I think community is a lot harder for a lot of couples.
Yes.
I know
so.
Yeah, I think so. I think, unfortunately, social media technology is amazing in so many ways, but I think it has disconnected us in significant ways that I think 20, 25 years ago we didn't have.
Yeah.
And so, so you really, you have to work extra hard at creating it.
You do.
Yeah.
You have to be more vulnerable, be willing to open up. Like, it doesn't just happen like it used to. I feel like community and friendships, even when I was growing up, felt easy. Like, you were just in this community. It was easy, and now it feels like it takes so much more intentionality and work to build those relationships.
And city like LA, very few people in our social networks in LA anyway grew up in LA.
Yes, very, very
so true. You're dislocated anyway from real committed community. Friends are in other states, in other cities, family aren't near us. And so you have to be really intentional about trying to find, and it's young. And so you have to be intentional about trying to find those voices, particularly the voices that are a little bit older, that have gone before you. That's harder to find. It's even hard to find in the church because the church is so focused on next gen.
Yeah.
And so we have to be intentional about trying to find those voices.
Yeah. And speaking about the church, something I wanted to go into too is to ask how your journey with being in full-time ministry, how does that impact a marriage? Because I know ministry can be very demanding.
Yeah.
We hear a lot about pastors burning out and all of that. And I'm curious how you guys kind of navigated that season of life, and if there was any challenges that maybe surprised you both stepping into that. Because it's really, your husband steps into it, but you both step into it, right? It becomes, and I know you were very involved as well. So just curious how that impacted kind of your marriage and what shift that created.
Yeah, I think, well, I'll speak for me. I think for me, the tendency in the church for workaholism in pastors is huge.
Huge. Yeah, we hear about it all the time.
So I think there's that temptation is to end up being fulfilled by the church. And you've got good reason.
And the validation you get from
validation from it. And so that's a real challenge is, if the church was taken out of our life, would we have a relationship? Would we have a marriage? Would we know each other? Or are we actually so involved in the church that we've lost the core of who we are? That was a challenge. And there were seasons of busyness. And, when the church was, growing or, changing, or that I got really caught up in the hamster wheel inside the church. And I would say I was probably unhealthy for sure, stressed, unhealthy, occupied constantly by my thoughts about the internal, what's going on in the church, the vision, the people, all the kind of world of the church can be all consuming at times for the pastor. And I fear, and certainly was aware, that Sibs could sometimes like, hello, where's my husband?
Yeah.
Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think, I mean, for sure. And it's definitely a challenge. It's, you have to work it out. But again, Ash, as I mentioned, we'd been married for 13 years by the time he stepped into that role. The kids were young. And so I think our life at that point was just really busy, just, school. I went back to work when Ash stepped into ministry. I was very fortunate to be I wanted to be at home with the kids when they were really young, and I was fortunate that we were able to do that. But when our eldest was 11, I stepped back into the workforce, and actually that was really great. We needed to do that for financial reasons because we could not, continue financially with.
I don't know what you mean, Di. What do you mean? My pastor's salary
with just one salary, but actually it was a great. It's like a completely different focus for me and engagement into the workplace. And so I wasn't all consumed by the church. And so I think your own interests, your own, whether it's hobbies, job, something that makes it so that, you also have something to talk about that's not just church when you get home, or, you're sort of sitting on the sofa at the end of the night. So I think that is really key to make sure that you both have your interests and things don't get completely swallowed up by ministry.
I think that's huge. That's really tough. And I mean, you hear about all the time pastors getting so engulfed in it also gives them validation. There's so much that comes from it. And so I think it's like you really do need accountability at that point.
No, the false self is alive and well in pastors.
Yeah.
I know. I've felt it within myself.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to, I need to be able to give Sibs permission to speak to that as well.
Yeah.
Like Sibs is my first accountability partner.
Absolutely.
Hello.
Like, hi,
where are you?
Over. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, that's really tough. Well, this has been such a beautiful conversation. I really appreciate you guys coming on. I want to leave this episode with kind of advice you'd have for people who are in the dating world. And then also people who are pursuing long-term relationship, and what advice you'd give people in today's society. Ash, I know you work, you're a can I call you counselor? Is that, what's your title?
I do counseling, spiritual director. And healing.
We've worked a lot together, which has been awesome in this last year. Super helpful. And I feel like I've grown a ton, so I appreciate our work together. And, but yeah, I'm curious what you would impart in wisdom to those of us who are out here. We're working hard. But for those of us that are dating and looking for a long-term relationship.
So I would say, I find humor just something that obviously I really enjoy, but something that's really helped us through our marriage. Like, we laugh together a lot. And there's something about laughter that, I don't know, first of all, it does something for you physically, emotionally, mentally. And it's really helped us through the difficult and challenging seasons. And it's just, I don't know, it's just kept, it's just brought life into our relationship. So I think humor is really key for me for relationships. And then I think I would say, whatever your relationship you're entering into, whether it's, you're going to be married to this person, it's not going to be perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect marriage. And so, yeah, just be aware of that. Don't idolize whatever you think your marriage or relationship should look like, because it's 100% not going to end up looking like that. So you don't set a goal that's unattainable. Be real, you're human. So yeah, laughter, and it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think a good point is enjoy the other person. Like, make sure you actually enjoy being with the person in the mundane, in the everyday, in the quiet, in the just hand in hand walking on the beach, walking in your neighborhood. I think we miss that. Like, do you just enjoy that person? That's where laughter comes in. Can you have fun with them? Are they someone you actually want to be with? And I
can't live in intensity.
Yeah,
all the time.
100%. Yeah,
for sure.
It's like, do you enjoy that time? And knowing that, like, you choose the relationship, you have to build it. You have to put the work in. So it's not going to be. But
I would definitely say, I think it's something I've said before. You can't change the other person, and they can't change you. But be both willing to change. Recognize that you will change. And that's part of the adventure is the transformation of your relationship, what it does to both of you.
Yeah.
So be open to change, which also helps with, if you've not got perfection, if you're not looking for the perfect person, that gives you the hope that, well, actually there's change happens too. So that's definitely something in there. So don't try and change the person. I probably now more than ever, I'm probably someone you'd know this because we've talked a lot. I think I'd want to look for brokenness and vulnerability. I think I want to see somebody. I encourage people who are dating, do you see a vulnerability? Do you see that they've done some work? Are they aware of what's going on inside them? Are they connecting the dots? Like, there has to be that authentic self, even if it's a bit messy. There has to be that authentic self. If there isn't the authentic self, I'd be worried. So I encourage people, if you see a bit of mess, great. That's okay. Because I bet you've got some.
Look, relationships are mirrors. And you're gonna feel good on your own. Then you're gonna get into a relationship and you're gonna realize, wow, I still have that problem, or that's coming up, or it's like, that's when all that starts to serve as. It's really easy being single. Nobody challenges you. I'm very rarely triggered these days. I'm like, just wait till I meet somebody. It's not gonna be like that.
Oh yeah, I do premarital a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And when I sit with couples who do premarital, if I hear them say, "It's just so good, it's amazing, we're so in love, we never argued," I'm like, oh no,
they're not being vulnerable.
But if I see people saying, actually, it's tough, I'm like, great, let's talk about the tough. Because that's where the gold is found. Actually, the deep love is found. And so
and the possibility for change, right? If you're aware of your stuff and you're open and vulnerable, then that's when you can begin to be transformed, right?
And you can build the relationship you want. I think of it, I just right now literally had a picture of a well, right? So when you're at just the surface, it's all bright and light, everything's great. But it's like, you have to get down to get into the water to really, to bring that up to the surface. And it's like, if you're not willing to go deep, you're not going to be able to build the relationship that you really want.
Vulnerability and authenticity are really key.
Yeah, absolutely.
And being able to see that in the other. Should give you hope. Great. This is going to be an authentic journey. Together.
Agree. I think it's that sense of curiosity. You have to have that. I think both partners need to have that sense of curiosity and willing to take accountability for themselves and where they're at. Even if it's messy and they don't really know why or what's happening, So.
And lastly.
Yes.
love sometimes dies, only to be reborn.
That's very true.
Like sometimes we do need to let our version of love change because we might have a dysfunctional version. And this life and death and resurrection of a deeper love comes.
Absolutely.
And so that's something that happens, actually. Yeah. Is it okay to fall out of love and continue in a committed relationship? Absolutely. I'd challenge you to find a couple that have been married for 50 years and not say, yeah, there were moments when I wondered whether I loved them.
Yeah.
That's the journey.
Yeah.
That's the journey.
Well, it feels like you're always learning and loving someone new because we change. As we, you're not going to have the same interests or be the same person you were 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
And it's being willing and open to know that you're going to love a lot of different people in your marriage.
Yep.
Because you're going to change. You're both going to change.
Yes.
Yes.
And thankfully, I haven't needed to change as much as Sibs. And she's changed.
He had all the problems.
The perfect.
She's the toxic one.
Yes. Yes.
You guys, thank you so much. Honestly, this was such a beautiful conversation. Thanks for being open.
Really enjoyed being with you.
Thanks for having us.
I love being able to share people's stories and share what marriage really is, right? I think we get so much fed online and through movies and all these things that are just, they're not really real. And then we build our expectations around that as we're dating. Yeah. And so that's why I'm starting this series, because I really want to try and get as much out of just the wisdom from people who have gone through it and have stepped through it and are going through it, right? So I appreciate you guys being vulnerable and open on this podcast.
Thanks for having us. Great to be here.
Appreciate it.